and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and it is so good to have you here. Today, we are looking at the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, moving the decision of a woman's right to choose back to the states. 7 states have already banned abortions, and another 17 are likely to do so in the coming weeks. So what does that mean here in New Jersey? Joining us to talk about how the state is handling abortion rights is Associate Professor of Justice Studies at Montclair State University, Francisca LaGuardia. She's standing by. First up, shared services in New Jersey and a new grant for local government called Shared Services Initiatives. Joining us to talk about this is Jacqueline Suarez, Director of the Division of Local Government Services, New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Welcome, Jacqueline. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so before we get into it too much, for our audience, can you explain a little bit about what it means to have a shared service and how it benefits the taxpayers?
Sure. So having shared services in New Jersey is a pretty simple process, actually. It involves at least 2 separate government entities. It could be municipalities, it could be counties, it could be fire districts, authorities, you name it. And at least 2 of them get together. They enter into some sort of agreement where they will either share professionals or services or equipment. And the goal there is really to not just save taxpayer dollars, but also to improve those efficiencies and services. And we've been seeing that all across the state. And we've been tackling some pretty large ones as of late, which is pretty exciting from our vantage point.
Yeah. Well, the Department of Community Affairs recently announced LEAP grants, and LEAP stands for Local Efficiency Achievement Programs, for 20 local governments. So can you talk a little bit about what some of the shared services we might see with this particular grant?
Sure. So this was our 3rd year, I believe, giving out the LEAP grants. And some of the highlights that I will focus on here are, one was like a regional EMS program. So we saw 4 different municipalities in Monmouth County getting together to share EMS services. We also have joint municipal courts. We saw down in Atlantic County, they actually had 8 different municipalities join. We've got 2 more who are on the fringes who are ready to join in the next few months. We had a joint fire department created between South Orange and Maplewood, which is very exciting. We saw 2 completely different departments merge into one. And we also saw several different municipalities doing merged dispatch services for police and emergency services. And then we also saw a couple of joint correctional facilities. Those are being shared by at least 2 different counties. And we saw that, I think, happen 3 different places around the state. So those are some of the bigger ones that we saw accomplished.
Sharing services, it sounds like it's really easy, but it isn't always to implement and to get everybody on board, that's for sure. Now, there are 3 types of grants in LEAP. So there are challenge grants, implementation grants, and county coordinator fellowship grants. So can you tell us a little bit about each type of grant, perhaps starting with the challenge grants?
Sure. So the challenge grant kind of is exactly like what it sounds like. It's our attempt to get municipalities, counties, authorities, et cetera, to think outside the box. So we've seen a lot of the low-hanging fruit already accomplished across the state. Things like sharing a tax assessor or maybe a tax collector, for example. Now we're looking at ones that are going to have much greater impact on both the services provided as well as the cost saved. So the challenge grants are more of larger collaborations that will have more expansive projects. So think of some of the ones I just named, like EMS services or correctional facilities, or maybe merging police departments or fire departments. So those are the more exciting ones that we're talking about with the challenge grants.
All right. And the other 2 types, other 2?
So we've got the implementation grant. Again, sounds very similar to what it actually is. Once they are about to cross the finish line and they're going to be implementing these shared services, the implementation grant would kick in to help reimburse them for the costs that they incurred from joining in to do the shared service. So think of things like maybe rebranding costs if they had to buy a new ambulance, let's say, or perhaps they had to create a new name. So the cost to maybe do new patches for the uniforms and to rebrand those vehicles. And then the last one is the county coordinator. And the county coordinator was the brainchild of the division to try to assist with shared services, both at the county level as well as the municipal level. So this gives them the opportunity to apply for a grant, and then we pay for the salary of the individual that they've hired as their coordinator. And then they are really attuned with what's going on both politically as well as shared service oriented within their communities and regions across the state. So that's kind of the gear there.
Interesting about the implementation grant Because when you talk about rebranding, sometimes I would imagine that is your next biggest hurdle, as opposed to getting people just to agree upon something. Is then what is the new name and what does the logo look like? That I would imagine is a bigger deal than some might anticipate, right?
It is. It is. For example, South Orange and Maplewood actually brought in a consultant to help with the rebranding of their patches, which was an opportunity for a couple of things. It brought the community together as well as the two different departments together so that they can kind of collaborate. And it was pretty much a little bit of a kumbaya kind of process, which was nice to kind of see with the firefighters merging into one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people often complain that government moves too slow. So sharing services, you would think it would help with efficiency and better services. Does it?
What we've seen so far, yes. We are taking great strides to kind of evaluate how the shared services are working across the state. So we have data analysts who work for the department and for our division in particular, and their goal is to really assess both the programs as well as the efficiencies of those programs. One of the items that we're working on right now is actually a worksheet, which would allow, it's a kind of Excel based, and it would allow the municipalities to plug in the costs that they've incurred because of doing the shared service, as well as the costs that they've saved by doing the shared service. Lots of different things that they wouldn't otherwise think of. And then the worksheet actually calculates their savings for them, and that way they can see it in black and white.
So in 2018, the governor appointed two people to be the shared services czar. Do I have it right? Nicholas Platt and Gordon Glatt? Okay, yeah, Platt and Glatt, not to be confused with Platt and Platt. How has the addition of these roles helped create new opportunities for shared services?
So I think what was really helpful about choosing Jordan Glatt and Nick Platt was that they are both former mayors. So Jordan was the mayor of Summit and Nick was the mayor of Harding. And what we kind of saw there was they were championing shared services before it became this catchphrase and something sexy to talk about in politics. And so they had that experience, which really lent to their ability to not just speak with elected officials, but also to kind of show their proven track record on getting some of these shared services done very early before it was commonplace. So I think it was very helpful from my vantage point. And since then, they've kind of gone around and drummed up not just the interest in it, but also helping with the courage. We call it like political courage to get some of these things done.
Well, that's a good point because people want the tax savings of sharing services, but when push comes to shove, they like their local fire chief. They like their, everything local. They know people by their first name. It's a big home rule state is another word that people used to talk about. They like knowing who their people are. Other places they can share services, but no, I like knowing who is going to be my fire chief. I don't want to share. So are you saying that is changing a little bit because people have been, talking about this, gosh, when I first was starting out, that was a big deal, talking about sharing services, and it just wasn't ever happening anywhere.
Sure, I do. I wouldn't say that it's not an issue. It certainly still is. But I think Mother Nature is kind of it's the necessity of invention, right? So we kind of saw this a little bit with COVID, with, for example, sharing municipal courts. Right. That was one of the biggest loss leaders for municipalities with revenue sources. So post COVID, we had to get a little creative. And then all of a sudden this turned into, hey, that wasn't so bad. Everybody kind of realized they didn't really lose anything. Their taxes went down. The services were actually improved. So maybe there is something here. And then we kind of saw that also with South Orange and Maplewood, right? So they had the political courage to tackle some of the larger things like shared school district, shared fire department. And it's worked well, so well that the municipalities, both the various cities and the residents, are comfortable continuing those shared services because it's worked so well. Mm-hmm. So I think we're kind of seeing it a little bit like a domino effect. Somebody's done it. We've done one small one. It worked. Now we can try something bigger.
I remember when Princeton Borough and Princeton Township merged, and boy, that was a huge deal. But instead of getting more into that, aside from supplying grants and shared services, can you tell us just a little bit more about the Department of Community Affairs and some of the other things that the division does?
Sure. So in the Division of Local Government Services, we're kind of the one-stop shop for all municipals. And any kind of local government, really. So anything smaller than the state, whether that's an authority, county, a fire district, or municipality. We oversee their budgets. We also have the local finance board here. So anytime they're doing some creative financing or they're going out to bond for different things, they come before us. And then within the Local Assistance Bureau, we've kind of what I call rounded out our stable of experts. We worked really hard to get technical experts from all across the state that have experience in different areas like a business administrator or a city manager, DPW expert, civil service. We have former police chiefs on staff, former deputy chiefs for fire departments. And the goal there is every municipality can kind of lean on us if they're trying to figure something out, whether that's a shared service, whether that's budget issues, whether that is, hey, I don't have somebody with civil service experience. Can you help us out here? And we've been rounding that out. It's been working really well. And we kind of branched off from having all transitional municipalities come within the Division of Local Government Services. So we oversee 8 municipalities who are in financial distress. And then we kind of offered this service as a way to kind of not just buffer them, but also all the municipalities that could be on the fringes or have questions. So before it becomes a problem, you can reach out and we'll help.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for taking the time to tell us a little bit about some of the shared services and also other things that the Department of Community Affairs does. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joining us now to talk about how New Jersey is handling abortion rights in light of the Supreme Court's recent ruling making abortion a state's right is Associate Professor of Justice Studies at Montclair State University, Francesca LaGuardia. Professor, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's first start out by talking about rights. So how has the Supreme Court's ruling changed abortion rights here in New Jersey?
So you're exactly right. The Supreme Court's ruling basically handed this issue back to the states, at least so far, and made it a states' rights issue. Now that makes very little difference as far as New Jersey goes for now, because the right to abortion access was already recognized as constitutionally protected under the New Jersey state constitution, above and beyond the federal constitutional protection. And on top of that, this year, seeing Dobbs work its way through the courts, New Jersey codified that constitutional right so that it's protected statutorily as well. So under statute and under New Jersey constitutional law, women have a fundamental right to make their own reproductive choices, and that includes accessing abortion.
But could it change? And if so, how could abortion rights change here in New Jersey?
So absolutely, it can change. There are a few different ways. First of all, that statutory codification of the constitutional right, that's statutory, that can change anytime that New Jersey votes to change the people who are in its legislature and its governor. Additionally, the judicial interpretation that the New Jersey state constitution protects abortion access can change as judges turn over. As we just saw, constitutional law changes. That happens at the federal level and at the state level. But what people are really concerned about right now is that anti-abortion activists working in these other states where abortion is becoming criminalized, where the ability to sue is being granted in other states, anti-abortion activists are very clearly pushing to also make a nationwide ban on abortion through Congress, federally, or by having the Supreme Court recognize or state that there is a fundamental right to life for a fetus. And then there might be a 14th Amendment issue that would threaten abortion access nationwide.
Right, and I've heard that the ultimate goal is to have a fetus bill of right, or a fetus rights protection bill. Correct. All right. Well, Governor Murphy has said if women come to New Jersey for an abortion, their privacy is going to be protected. But could there be legal issues for a woman if you're coming from a state where it is not legal?
So this is the question. The next question that came up was that even though access is available in New Jersey, states like, for instance, this law in Texas, SB 8, allows anyone, frankly, inside or outside of New Jersey, to sue anyone who helps someone get an abortion, particularly if they help a Texas citizen get an abortion. So the question was, can doctors in New Jersey be sued? Can clinics in New Jersey be sued? If women come from Texas to New Jersey, then can they be sued? Can they be criminally prosecuted if they come out of a state that has criminalized abortion and they come to New Jersey in order to get access? in order to protect both women who come to New Jersey and women who already are in New Jersey and doctors and clinics who are working in New Jersey passed two more statutes. One provides privacy protections so that clinics are prevented. It is against the law for clinics to share information as part of a criminal or civil investigation into abortion that comes from one of these states that has tried to make abortion illegal. It also, the idea is that also New Jersey will not provide New Jersey resources to engaging in these investigations or helping with these investigations. So that would include things like sending police officers out to look for someone, but also encouraging the, turning over information as part of a subpoena. And also New Jersey has now passed a law that says that New Jersey will not extradite individuals who are being criminally charged in other states for these new criminal statutes against abortion.
Do you think that our medical establishment is able to handle what is also coming their way, like some of the unintended consequences, like women are going to be protected, is what I'm hearing from you, if they come here, and there's certainly legal issues in New Jersey, but let me ask you there. Currently, are there any legal issues for New Jersey or for New Jersey women, first of all?
There are no legal issues for New Jersey or New Jersey women right now. If you are a New Jersey woman and you go in to have an abortion in New Jersey, everything is legally just the same as it was. There might be complications in terms of access, in terms of clinics becoming more busy as people come in from out of state, because people are definitely trying to find places where they can access these services. And also, frankly, there's been, to some extent, this incredible increase in demand for Plan B, for emergency contraception, for IUDs, right? So there's a lot of access issues that might show up, and people definitely want to be active in that regard.
All right. But it's those unintended consequences of more people coming to other states like New Jersey for access, and can the medical establishments, can they handle it? Because a lot of places in general are having a hard time in a post-COVID world, even providing services for their current, for the people who already live here in the state.
Yes, and it was already difficult. I mean, there have always been fewer clinics than demand. And remember that abortion is not all that happens in a lot of these clinics. Also, there's a lot of demand for healthcare. There's a lot of basic healthcare that goes on in these clinics as well. And so, yes, absolutely, that is a repercussion that women in New Jersey may start feeling.
Are you concerned that this is going to become an election issue, and whenever there might be a gubernatorial election or there is a legislative election, that this could be open to ping-ponging, and in 2 years, 4 years, it may not be legal, and then in another 2 to 4 years, well, it is legal. Do you foresee that possibly happening?
I don't foresee that happening in New Jersey, particularly because New Jersey has protected this to such an extent. So it takes time for this type of turnover to happen. There was, right, we did get new justices in the Supreme Court, and we did get the overruling of a precedent that had stood for 50 years, but it took those 50 years to get to that point. It takes a long time for that level of change to happen. And now it would have to happen both at the statutory level and at the constitutional level. So those things should not happen so quickly. Do I think it will become an election issue? Absolutely. I think it will become an election issue, and I think it should become an election issue. Now that it is a right and a protection that is held only at the state level, people who want to hold on to that right have to start thinking much more carefully about what is happening when they elect both their local representatives and their federal representatives. This is going to be a serious issue for probably the next 10 or 20 years.
What are young people saying? They're more engaged now than ever since COVID. Really, a lot of younger people are way more interested in what is happening at the state, local, and of course at this level as well. But what are some of your students saying?
My students are scared, frankly. I mean, my students are at the age level where this really affects people, where they're thinking about how they're going to plan out their families, how they're going to plan out their careers, how they interact with all of this. It is a very difficult time for people. Frankly, I also have students who already have children, And remember that 2/3 of women who get abortions in New Jersey already have children. And part of the reason that someone makes that decision is because they're worried about threatening their own health or threatening their well-being and what that does to the rest of their family and to their children, right? So this is definitely things that come up in our classes and that I hear people talking about and really worrying about. And I also just want to mention that, that it's not as if there are not pro-life students in my classes. There are many pro-life students in my classes, but just as we see reflected at the national level, even a very large, something like close to half of people who identify themselves as pro-life and would prefer for abortions not to happen recognize or feel that women should be the main decision makers in this area. So maybe they are personally against it, but they feel that women legally should still be able to make that choice and that it should be primarily an issue for a woman and her doctor to decide.
Yeah, I was going to say, you bring up a really important point, and conversations that I've had with other people who might say, I'm personally pro-life, but I wouldn't want to take that decision away from anybody else. I'm not the one to judge that. And especially when you're getting into, you think abortions, well, it's an unwed mother, but no, it's not necessarily. It might be somebody going through in vitro or having, some complications. I mean, I remember when I was pregnant, I was considered a high-risk pregnancy, and they do the amniocentesis. I wanted to know if there were any issues that I could anticipate, but the option is, if there are significant problems, to terminate. So and I can't imagine having to make those decisions, or for anybody else to say what you can and cannot do.
Absolutely. And also sometimes those significant problems can be life-threatening to the woman who is pregnant, right? So we hear also terrible stories of people who are in the process of miscarrying, or who have tried in vitro or tried something else, and where it seemed like there would be an embryo that's developing, it stops. And this or ectopic pregnancies, and this can be very dangerous for a woman's life. But often it's not a life or death situation that requires, that counts as a medical emergency in these statutes that criminalize abortion. It doesn't reach the level that allows doctors to act and end that pregnancy until a point where there's a real question of whether the woman is going to survive. When you have a situation that inevitably is going to threaten a woman's health, you don't want to wait until it's a life or death situation before you act, right? If you know that inevitably this thing is going to come up. And we are seeing now that doctors working in these states where abortion has been criminalized are afraid to take that action to protect their patients because they don't know how the law will respond, or whether they have pushed it long enough so that the emergency is present enough to be able to act on it legally.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and for shedding light also on what younger people in your classroom and you're interacting, what they have to say about it, because it is affecting younger people more than perhaps people my age. But we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The New Jersey Department of Health is addressing the rise in monkeypox cases across the nation. They announced expanded eligibility for the monkeypox vaccine and the state's distribution plan for the 2,700 available doses. New Jersey Department of Health Commissioner Judith Persicelli says New Jersey has been given a very limited number of doses at this time, and the department continues to press the CDC on timely delivery of additional necessary doses to meet the needs of our at-risk populations. The state will make the vaccine available to New Jerseyans who are at high risk of having been exposed to the virus in the past 14 days. Meantime, while Governor Phil Murphy is on vacation in Italy, Acting Governor Sheila Oliver held a press conference to highlight affordable housing programs in the recently passed state budget.
Affordable housing is needed by every sector of our population in New Jersey, from our police, our fires, our teacher, our daycare aide, those that work in government. Affordable housing is something that everyone needs to have access to in our state. Think about those working class people. And think about our first responders, our medical care providers, and young families who are just starting out, wanting to, get their feet wet, be it in, a rental or in a starter home as first-time home buyers. The cost of housing in this state was out of reach for them. This doctrine reflected the constitutional obligation of each municipality to help fix this issue. But nearly 50 years later, the issue still remains. Governor Murphy and I understand that there have been many challenges along the way. There simply hasn't been enough funding to see these projects through to completion with the rising cost of real estate, building supplies, and labor.
One of the largest programs in the budget is the Affordable New Jersey Communities for Homeowners and Renters Tax Relief Program, also known as ANCHOR. This $2 billion initiative is aimed at reducing property taxes for homeowners and renters with rebates ranging from $450 to $1,500.
And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you back right here next time.